our presenter today. Corey White is the CEO of Cybertar, and has been in the security industry for quite some time. I won't age him right now because I think I still got a couple years on him, but he's been in the business for about 25 years, successfully managing security practices and consulting teams. His works encompass basically virtually every industry: government, critical infrastructure, finance, healthcare, and manufacturing. Corey has just created Cybertar AI just within the last few years to enable vendor partners to deliver reliable, repeatable, and measurable business outcomes to their clients. Corey's also served as the SVP of Worldwide Consulting and Chief Experience Officer at Cylance, as well as the Southwest Director of Consulting for Foundstone and McAfee Intel Professional Services. So he's probably seen a lot of what we've seen and probably a lot more with that. So with that, I would like to introduce him. And Corey, why don't you take it away with Unbreaking Your Security Program?
All right, thank you so much, Greg. It's an honor to be back in front of the ISSA group. I think that for Orange County, this is probably, I think, my third time kind of over the years of talking and presenting. And again, it's always an honor to be in front of this group. And I will not bore you guys with any of my background. Greg did an amazing job of that so far. So diving right in, first interactive question we have for you guys is business outcomes. What does that actually mean? Yeah, I know what I think it means, but if you guys can chime in on the chat, I'd love to hear what you guys think. And I know some of you guys, I can see the chat, and so I may call on people to get it started if nobody jumps in right away. So, Aileen, can you open up chat? My buddy Don Nguyen. I want to hear his opinion on business outcomes.
Yep, one sec. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. No, Don. Well, okay, we see. So now, if I said it right, and if not, then Ryan Upton.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, so in my mind, the business outcome is something that comes out of a situation that could be a function of necessity, not always a business. It could serve that, can serve that.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Can't hear anything you're saying. Do you mind maybe writing it in the chat?
Yeah, just write it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna switch to a few of the comments we have here. Setting a goal and achieving it, that came from Brent, which I agree with, makes sense. And then Brian, of course, business outcomes in the context of cybersecurity, functions as designed, aka no surprises. Again, makes a lot of sense. And then on top of that, we got Edward Preston saying, getting my technology onboarded, plugged in, and working to show value. All great answers. And from my perspective, tying security to what the business actually needs to have is very, very important. Before I talk anymore, Brian Gantaroff jumped in, empowering employees to provide value to the organization and their customers while maintaining security and governance. Very good one as well. The other piece that I think we may be missing, at least in my opinion, is when I talk to companies, instead of talking to the security teams, I've made it a point to go above that and talk to business owners, talk to CEOs of the companies, and they actually look at security very differently. They see security, we need to be in SOC 2 compliant so we can sell more to our customers, or we need to complete these business these questionnaires so that we can actually respond back and get more business. They think of it in that context. And then, second piece of it from a security side of it is if they spend $100,000 on security technology, how does that actually help them be more secure? How we measure that? And so what is the outcome of it? And we're going to deep dive a lot more into that, and we'll revisit, business outcomes as we go through this. So moving forward, let's talk about technology really quickly. From a technology perspective, the exponential age is upon us. I don't know if you guys agree or disagree, but we want to ask that. But what I'm explaining here is exponential age means, a friend of mine, Peter Diamandis, I got a chance to meet him, but he defines it as from 1900 all the way to 2000, we had the same amount of innovation. And then from 2000 to 2016, the same amount of innovation. And this was written a few years ago, so 2016 to 2022, same amount of innovation. Now, I wonder, and again, you guys can chime in and chat here, did COVID accelerate this? Yeah, think about it. Is this correct? Do you guys agree with these timeframes? And did COVID accelerate it? So please chime in with your thoughts as we go through this.
And I'm launching a poll so you can answer on screen as well.
How long does the poll go for? Like 30 seconds or so?
Yeah, I can end it whenever. There's still some responses coming in, so I'll wait another 15 seconds or so.
I see we got, what's the definition of innovation? In general, it is, I like we think of it as security innovation for this particular context, because I've looked at it over the last 25 years and what we have today compared to what we had back in 95 when I started, night and day. So do we think COVID will accelerate this technology advancement? Looks like almost 80% say yes. And Greg, I think you have a great answer as well. It did force people to use technology that was already out there and use it faster. And from a security and technology perspective, I do think that is a good thing. And then Ryan says, yes, adding a new challenge provided stress to the community. And so novel responses have different environments to be measured in. Agreed, yeah, for sure. So yeah, it looks like most people agree with Greg and his response there. So moving on, is another kind of interesting quote by Peter, but AI and robots will do everything better. Again, quite the controversial statement, but I don't know everything about AI and robots. Last company I was at was Silence, we did a ton of AI. But at the end of the day, I watched how comparing being at Silence compared to McAfee and what Silence was able to do with machine learning models versus the kind of the static legacy approach that was done by McAfee at the time. It was night and day. And then I think about it, if you look at the predictions that come true, the next 20 years, a lot of the jobs may be, replaced by AI and technology and robots. This is pretty controversial. And my wife and I, we made the decision to homeschool our kids even before COVID. We did it a few years ago. But we realized that we didn't want our kids to be taught how to be just like everyone else. And what ends up happening is we looked at, when we're teaching them math, should we teach them, manipulatives, kind of the slide rule, kind of abacus kind of thing? Should we teach them how to do it on paper? Should we teach them how to do it on Excel? Should we teach them how to do it on a calculator? And we ended up teaching them all of those things. But when you think about, what that means for technology and cybersecurity, we have to think differently. What should we be learning today? Should we be learning AI? Should we be learning automation? What is that next thing? So, I want us to think about our talk in that context as we continue to evolve. Next question for you guys. And I've used this slide in a few decks over the last 4 or 5 years. And originally it did say technology doubles every 18 months. I switched it to 12. I'm curious what you guys think. How fast does technology double, especially as it relates to cybersecurity technology? You get something, how fast is it started to be obsolete moving forward? So just kind of chime in and chat on what some of your thoughts are. I've also, we kind of, if you guys aren't familiar with Moore's Law, Moore's Law, he described it back in, I think it was just 65, when he came up with this, that it would double every 2 years as it relates to processing power. But what ends up happening with processing power is, I think it's actually accelerated. It's gone much faster than Moore's Law. So I see a few comments coming in. From the manufacturing, or how can humans absorb the technology? I think that's a major problem. How can we absorb the technology as fast as it's coming out? That absolutely is a challenge that we see in cybersecurity. Specific to the industry, have you had technology advance and speed up in the last few years? That's the question. See if there are any more comments coming in. Don't see anything. 18 and 24 months. I see that EP. All right, Brian, what you gotta say? It starts depreciating immediately and more drastically over about 6 months period as the adversaries compensate. Yep, definitely are seeing that. It's funny, I was reading an article this morning that ransomware as a service exists, and I've known that for a while, but it just keeps getting more mainstream as a thing where the hackers are getting more innovative. So the question here, so if you have a major breach, you're responsible for security at your company, is your job at risk? And I don't know, Elaine, if you can take a few people off of mute and let them chime in. I'd love to hear what Brian has to say as it relates to that, or even Greg.
Absolutely.
Well,
just raise your hand if you're if you want to talk.
Brent says absolutely. I want to know why he says absolutely.
Hey, how you doing, Corey?
Hey.
Why is my job at risk if a breach happens? Well, the company may not exist. That if I'm the MSP for somebody like that, that is the end of my paycheck from them if they go out of business. I think there's an awful lot of legal implications. Anytime you're going through and doing things, a lawyer's going to get involved, and they're going to look for somebody to pin the tail on. So I really believe that anytime a major situation would happen, yeah, that certainly puts my job at risk.
Yep, I agree. We'll see what the poll says as well. I want to know why William Hagerman says it could be. So we'll let him jump on and speak.
Go ahead, James.
Hi. So as a consultant in the data breach industry for many, many years, my answer is absolutely yes, your job is at risk if you're anywhere in security. More importantly, as a CISO. But I've had boards specifically ask me if a CISO needs to be fired, if a security manager, director, any of these kind of people. And the response I give is that you now have one of the most qualified people to do this job, because most people in the security industry have not actually gone through a data breach at this point in time.
So James, then are you enabled to make all the right decisions, or are you handcuffed? Do you have proper staff? Do you have the right tools? Because if your job's on the line and also they handcuff you and don't give you what you need to be successful, I mean, how do you be successful in this job?
It's a great question, and it depends on your management and your board. If they see this as a wake-up call, then they start listening to things that you've been asking for and reevaluating things. If they're not, they're just looking for a scapegoat, then they're going to drop you no matter what, or they're going to not give you financial support that you need, and you're going to get dropped anyways eventually.
That's exactly it. That's the challenge.
Hey, Corey, just a quick question. This is Greg again. For all the VARs and the consultants and so forth in the groups, because we've been telling people that they should do this and that they're vulnerable and all the rest of that stuff. And it usually, unfortunately, goes to wherever the bucket of money is, which is usually the board, and the board's like, yeah, we got other things to do. And then when a breach happens, back to James's point, is that when they all of a sudden go, our security guys don't know what they're talking about? Because they seem to have, pretty good amnesia that we've been telling them that outside and inside the organization for a long time. So is that a factor to be put into this question?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I can't name, all the breaches, but I've handled some, major breaches over the years and been the lead on those. And what ends up happening is, here's the dynamic. So the breach happens, then usually everybody's scrambling, and the board gets involved, all the executives get involved. And the main question is, why, what did we do wrong? Why are we a target? And some of these breaches, one was, fighting against Anonymous, and they actually didn't do anything wrong necessarily. They pissed off Anonymous, basically, and Anonymous was attacking this company globally. The executives, felt like that they shouldn't have been a target. The board felt like they shouldn't have been a target, but as a result of it, then they started getting more serious about cybersecurity. A few things that we're also starting to see is that boards are being held accountable for cybersecurity breaches as well. And that takes a lot of the onus off of the security team and CISOs, where historically it used to be just them and they were going to be the fall guy. Now boards have to be accountable as well. So I think that is definitely a move in the right direction. But I think there's a huge challenge of quantifying what is value in a cybersecurity tool, product, or solution, and how you're getting value out of it. So that's what we have to figure out as a cybersecurity industry. So that said, I'm gonna move on. There we go. So this goes without saying, and I hate FUD, but yes, hacks are happening all the time. I mean, it's just, you watch the news almost every single day as something happens. So we all know that is happening. But this ties into my other point here, is that I have a ton of CISO friends that are just quitting. they're coming out and like, Corey, I think I might be done. I don't want to be a CISO anymore. What it comes down to is they ask that question of, I don't want to be that person. Why would I be responsible for this? And I don't necessarily have control. But I'm curious, why do you guys think that CISOs are quitting, or they turn over every 18 to 24 months?
We have some people on the chat, Corey. Don said CISOs are overwhelmed with security priorities.
Yep. And I see William says, exactly. It's not when you are going to get hacked, is whether or not you've been hacked. A lot of pressure. I'd love to hear your opinions, William. If we can unmute you, I'd love to hear more about that. Because there's a few philosophies that go in and you tell your board, hey, well, you're going to get hacked, something's going to happen. Or you say, we're going to do everything we possibly can to prevent being hacked. But we need you to give me the tools, the power to actually do those prevention pieces. I just wonder what that conversation looks like, William. I don't know if we can unmute if you're willing to share.
And James raised his hand as well. James, you wanna?
Oh yeah,
Sure. Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I can say is that they don't have a seat at the table. CISOs are sometimes considered junior executives in a lot of companies. They don't get a seat at the table to really participate in moving the company in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree 1000%. That just freaking drives me crazy. I mean, this goes back to like the early 2000s. I was doing, ISO gap analysis, for customers, and anybody that knows, 27002 or one, it says like, do you have a person in charge of security? And it talks about reporting structures of it. And you just don't have control. You don't have the seat at the table, but at the same time, you're the fall guy. That's extremely frustrating, for me. Who else wants to jump in? I see Norman there has some comments. Who else? Aileen, can we open up?
Sure, just raise your hand if you want to talk and I can let you speak. But everyone's muted right now, so you just have to raise your hand.
Okay.
We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, so Norman's like CISOs notifying management about risk, but management's not supporting or has budget for security. That is the age-old problem. I mean, that's forever. Okay, there are no other hand raisers. Well, there's Brian. Security is perceived as IT problem when it really should be owned by the business and addressed as their level of allowable risk allows. The business job is in the risk decision business. Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And that's what we're talking about today.
And
So,
William just raised his hand. Go ahead, William.
yeah.
I'm just making sure you can hear me. So, yeah, for me, I think one of the issues, though, when you go in front of the board, you start talking about cybersecurity. I think that is one of the things that the previous person was talking about, saying you don't have a seat at the table, because oftentimes it's not. Although they're required to maintain it and have an oversight of cybersecurity within the organization, but they obviously sometimes sit back and look at it from a perspective that it is there, we understand it, but we believe that our systems and our controls that we have in place are okay, that the likelihood of us getting hacked is going to be low. Therefore, because there hasn't been a known breach, okay, and nothing's been jeopardized in terms of technology or proprietary information, it sort of gets put on the back burner until actually something happens. And then when it happens, they're like, oh my God, we should have listened to you, right? But the other thing it is, I think what happens is there's a false sense of security. It's just like fraud. Fraud happens at every organization, okay? And this happens here, but you sort of, I don't know, it's there, you're aware, but you don't really go in and address it until something significant happens. And, and going in cybersecurity, it changes constantly. I probably read the same article that you were reading with regards to hacking and how it's evolving and changing. And hackers are now very collaborative and are working together to take down companies, okay? And they're sharing technologies to do this. So what you think you have a good today, you know what? You're actually might be behind them unless you have hackers on your payroll helping you defend against these things. So it becomes very difficult. How much you want to pay to go back and try to be in the best. I happen to work for a company that's in the aerospace and defense, and we get hacked did try to hack. We get attacked all the time, right? And I mean, we have, several lines of defense trying to protect all of our information, but you never know. I would never go into a board and say that we're protected, because I can't say that. And I would never go into the board and tell them, there's no fraud here. That's just not, that's the way that if something does happen, yeah, you'll go outside. You'll end up losing your job for sure if you go out and we're foolish enough to say something. And I would never do that. I'm going to do the best I can with the resources I have and the technology you provided me to do this, but it's not an absolute.
It is a very difficult job, and it's one of the things that I looked at even before I formed this company. If you notice, the hackers, they run this like a business, like ransomware as a service. It is a business. It is how they make money, especially in COVID days. You can sit at home and make so much money, ransomware and all these coordinated attacks, and the odds of you getting called are extremely low. So it's an attractive business. But if you look at cybersecurity, we don't run cybersecurity as a business strategy within organizations. We still kind of have the black hat hacker pen test mentality, and I think that's handicapping us a little bit, to where we can't match the same business prowess sometimes as that the hackers have. So that's just a huge challenge. And what I've heard back from many CISOs, I didn't even come up with these terms, but I laughed out loud when I heard it, as chief setup officer, chief sacrifice officer, and chief scapegoat officer. This is what was driving them to say, I need to quit. I need to go and be a consultant. I'll be a virtual CISO, and I don't have nearly as much responsibility, and I can kind of say, hey, I told them, they didn't listen. But if you're actually an employee, it's so much more risk. And that's what I'm starting to see. And so, like I said, cybersecurity, industry, it is a growing business. There's a ton of money to be made on the vendor side. And I think that ties back, and that ends up being a little bit of the problem. As you look at CISOs, I did some research, and this is actually back in the fall last year, but I think it still kind of applies. the average salary is around 233K, and up to 341K. I mean, hell, it's more than what I'm making. It's a great salary, but then why are people quitting? Because it's too much risk, it's too much stress. I actually read a study that came out about 6 months ago, and it was talking about how stressful a job it is to be a security person at a company, because you don't know what's coming around the corner. You don't know when that next attack is going to happen. And so what we have to really think about is, as a security industry, is that it's driven by more money, and vendors make more money selling more things. CISOs can make more money, but that's the only reason why they're taking a job, is for that money. But they know the risk and the stress, so that's causing part of a problem for us. So do we have a poll? Let's give a poll, Aileen.
Yep.
I didn't. Oh, we're good. Okay. All right. So I want to take a minute. Let's just pause and look at the future of what is happening in the next 20 years or so, because I truly believe we have to be able to look around the corner to be able to make the right decisions today. And so I did some research, and this is projected to be our world in 2038, which frankly is not that far away. And I think COVID may have accelerated some things. We have to look at the reality that robots and AI will replace most jobs. We just went through the funding process with here at Cybercriminals, and talking to a ton of VCs. They if you're using AI or some kind of RPA, some type of automation, they were extremely interested. If you're not, then you probably won't get funded as a new company. You have to have that new thing. And so that's going to be where the industries are going to go. Even with what we're doing in Cybercriminals and automating, some getting outcomes for our customers. I explained to my wife, she's like, so you can have less employees, you're gonna replace jobs. And I said, but it's gonna be way better. So it's a whole kind of social piece to it. And that's pretty crazy when you think about it. The other piece that ties into it is universal basic income. If there are fewer jobs, then UBI is something that I know Bill Gates and a few other folks are talking about. We have to start looking at it, because it will change the way what we consider work is. And the most interesting piece to me is not the fact that work is going to change and you may get a basic income, but how many people do you guys know that identify their self-worth with their job? So if I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, or CEO, or I'm the head security guy, or whatever it is, that is their self-worth. And if that goes away, or gets automated, or gets down to 20 hours a week or whatever, then we as human beings have to change the way we think about our own personal self-worth. I think that is kind of the biggest thing. Next week, you have your own private AI. I love technology, so I have my bed is calculating how long I'm sleeping at night, and I have an Aura ring on, and it tells me how healthy I am. I'm a big fan of kind of just the latest and greatest health technology. So if you think about your own private AI, how many of us think our phones will be our own private AI? It will have all this intelligence about us. So that is coming. And then living in the metaverse. I love this term, this concept. I really think that COVID's accelerating it. I didn't know what metaverse was until last year, either, if you guys don't. But metaverse is when you think about our AI, and you also think about being able to put on virtual reality goggles. And Aileen lives in Jersey, or not Jersey, she's from Jersey, but she lives in Connecticut. But if we go to work in the morning, we both put on our goggles, then we could have a virtual workplace. And that will be coming. So you think about it, I don't have to get in my car and drive to an office and sit somewhere like none of us are doing now anyway. But that allows us to interact with avatars in the future, kind of tied into why our company is Avatar. But that's what the future will look like. I think a good movie, a little bit off topic, but is a Ready Player One. Fantastic movie around living in the metaverse, where you're your avatar all the time. And then lastly, 120-year lifespan. I'm really deep into that stuff. There's a biohacking conference that's virtual that's happening this weekend. You Google biohacking conference and Upgrade Labs. It's all kind of cool stuff around it. But you think about what we do, and retirement is at 65. I never plan on retiring personally because it's a very interesting study I looked at said people that say I'm gonna retire early and they retire say at 55, 10 years early. On 59% of them are dead by 65. So I'm just not gonna do the retiring thing, and hopefully I can live a lot longer. But again, these are future things that we have to think about. And you take this, you put it in the context of cybersecurity, then how do we think about what we're doing today when this is coming around the corner? And then when you think about it, I know it's a forward statement, but if we get replaced by robots or ABI and AI and end up receiving UBI, I really, really think we have to change our focus as a industry from a cybersecurity perspective. Is how can we help CISOs, help companies be more secure, remove some of the risks that they're seeing, and not think about how much can I make more money off of this customer? How can I actually help them more? So what I'm doing here at Cybertar, what we're aiming to do is be on the same side as the customer, actually help them get to their outcomes, help define their outcomes. And we need to do that as an industry. So that being said, I see, I know we've got a few comments. We need to step up investment in most critical resources and culminating in cyber warriors. Absolutely. Let me jump on soapbox on that for a second. Just go back one slide while I talk about that. But when you think about cyber warriors and more people doing cybersecurity, that is a huge, huge problem. I did some research, and I was just looking at how big the gap is as far as us having cyber expertise. And just in the DC area alone, there are like 15,000, 16,000 jobs in cybersecurity. So how can we possibly expect to win when we have that much of a shortage? So we need to start welcoming automation and some of these newer solutions out there that allow us to get there. Anyway, so Greg, I love hearing what people think about UBI. I can whole conversation about this. I see your comment. Is UBI being necessary is much further off than in most of our lifetimes. However, definitely we will see a new retool of job skills. Absolutely.
That's the other Greg Walker, by the way, not this one. There's two of us. Lucky guys.
Okay. So let me move on here. So what we really look at is when you look at channel, look at VAR, and I know there may be some channels and VARs out on this call, and I'll pick on myself because I had to become one of them to help try to solve it. And I want us all to think about this. Instead of just throwing a product at a customer and saying, hey, you need this, if we start thinking about it in the context of, does this really help them? Will it help them reach their security outcomes? Understand what that customer actually really needs, and then let's sell that to that customer. I think that's gonna, again, help you sell more in the future because you have a trust there, and also at the same time help the industry. So we have to look at it that way. We already know that CISOs, boards, executives at companies aren't consistently getting value and outcomes from their solutions. And then companies are repeatedly getting hacked. Again, we know that. But the other piece is most product companies do not offer services or outcomes. And this is something that is pretty near and dear to me, being a services guy for so long. I've seen it firsthand. Is a major problem, which ties into number 5, is that I want everybody to realize when you think about this, if a cybersecurity company is funded by a VC, a venture capitalist, they're looking at their margins of that company. And if they know that I can make 100x off of a product and I can only make 3x off of a service, then they're just not going to do it. It's not in their best interest. And I'm pretty sure everybody on this call knows that to really implement something and get value out of it, you need people, process, and technology. So if you just buy technology, then you're not getting, you know, all three of them. It's left to your company to actually do the process and people part of it. But if you have a shortage of staff, you're not going to be able to get there. So we have a major problem in cybersecurity that is preventing us from actually getting value from our technology. So we have to look at it in that context. And again, driven by more money, you see how much money is invested in cybersecurity, and it keeps on growing and growing and growing. Last year, you know, seriously, I checked, and it was, again, doing a similar presentation. 3,500, you know, cybersecurity companies is the number I came up with. At RSA, it was a little over 4,000. Now I'm hearing that we're at 4,500. In my head, I can't believe that is even true. But, you know, that's what we're looking at. There's so much money to be made in cybersecurity, especially around companies being compromised and incidents. You think about it, the industry makes money off of incidents and not money off of kind of stopping them for the most part. So question for you guys, let's chime in here. Do security tools solve the problem?
And there's a poll up on the screen as well. I'll give you guys a minute to answer.
A hard no from Jesse. Jesse, if you want to raise your hand and say why, I'd love to hear it. Anybody else want to chime in?
We got 5 yeses. I'd love to hear from whoever answered yes.
I want to hear that too.
Jesse, I'm going to allow Jesse to talk.
Well, Corey, you pointed out that we need people, processes, and technology. So the technology is one little piece of it. And obviously you need to have the people that use that technology in the kind of the best way. And then, you know, we have all these tools, so how come we still keep getting hacked? I mean, there's tons of open source tools, tons of tools you can purchase. And the reason we're getting hacked is because the adversary has a clear mission to make money. And as long as you got a focused, clear adversary that is looking for ways around your tools, it's going to be a cat and mouse game. So no tool can be perfect. There will always be vulnerabilities. And what we want to do is have layers of defenses so we can detect these breaches far quicker than the industry average.
Yep, makes sense, Jesse. I agree. Anybody else want to chime in?
Yes, I'm going to open it up for Derek. Go ahead, Derek.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I think, you know, there's a ton of great tools out there, but what it really comes down to is ensuring that you're deploying them properly and completely, and that you've got enough people to do that deployment and do the operation of the tool. So many times we deploy tools and think that's just going to be the end to our problems, but we don't have the additional resources that we apply to the problem to ensure that we're getting the full value out of that tool. And it's unfortunate that, you know, you wind up having to deploy more headcount thinking that the tools are going to solve all your problems, but that's still a reality. And, you know, so many companies think they can get away with more automation when it's not actually the case.
1,000%, Derek. I agree. That's what I've seen. In the last months, I've talked to companies, and one company is a pretty large organization, but they had over 150 tools, and literally they were just renewing them, thinking at some point they get a chance to implement them. And then I've seen others that had breaches and incidents, and some of the tools, if they had just used them and configured them properly, then they would have stopped the incident, but they just didn't have it set up. So it definitely is somewhere in the middle.
And I think just one last quick comment. I just think the biggest gap that we see is with SIEM tools, and you got it deployed, you think you're doing okay, but you still get hacked, and you don't realize you got hacked for a couple months because you weren't monitoring the right logs. And unless you've completely and fully deployed that SIEM, you're going to wind up with a false sense of security.
I want to talk. I could probably talk for 5 minutes on that because I 1000% agree. I've seen that happen over and over again. And so as a result, I'm not a big fan of SIEMs. I'm a fan of having some kind of source solution, but I'm also a bigger fan of cleaning up your environment. And so that you aren't dependent on, oh, I gotta wait until I see an alert so that I can respond to it to go and fix it. But if you had ports open to the internet, if you had unpatched systems, if you weren't using MFA, whatever, then do those things first, and then try to clean up the noise that you would be getting from those alerts. So anyway, like I said, I could talk for a while on that. Anybody want to chime in? How do you evaluate security controls? How do you know you have the right tools, the right frameworks? What are you measuring yourself against as a company?
We also got some good comments in the chat, Corey.
Yeah.
TCI Greg Walker said, I think the question is hard to answer, yes or no. No tool is perfect, but they do provide protection. Like Corey said, it's a combination of people, processes, and products that make for a complete solution.
Yeah, definitely agree.
Yep. Anyone else want to talk? You can raise your hand and I'll unmute you.
I'll read Ryan's, which I agree with. Iterative and continuous measurement and improvement programs for each tool set, and separately for integration into control sets. I agree. I mean, here's the deal. I just talked to hundreds of companies. They don't have measurements, for their tools that they purchase. They buy the tool, but they don't know how to measure and quantify that. And I've talked to, this is the other interesting point, as I was building this business, I talked to dozens and dozens of CEOs of companies or products that we all use. And I asked them, what outcome do you want your customers to get? How do you measure success? And then they give me features, or they give me vague answers or breaches stop happening. But how do you know? How do you measure? What do they look like before, and what do they look like after your tool's implemented? And they're not thinking that way. And that's what we have to evolve to. I'll move forward. I just said this, but value, outcome, and measurable results ties in exactly with what Ryan said.
Hey, Corey, quick question for you. What's your feelings on the fact that, the attack vector is getting broader by the day, so there's a lot more holes that the bad actors can go after, but just the general time frame of, that they're going after a certain, you don't even have to know what the compromise is, but the fact that how long, and maybe this, because I know you study this stuff, how long does it take the average organization of any size, enterprise, mid-size, what have you, to actually implement a new security tool or solution? And are they obsolete by the time they get it to the front line?
Great question. A few metrics there. My internal metrics, how I've kind of measured it is, because I've done this, everything that I've done for a customer is on average around 100 days, about 3 months is really what it comes down to. My goal is to make that a much shorter time frame. But if you get a solution, you need to be getting some kind of value within a certain time frame, within 30 days. The metric that we're using at Cybertar is TTV, time to value, and we want to be able to demonstrate that back to our customer and make our customer, who is our partner, make them look good. And they're like, hey, I bought X and time to value was 75 days or whatever, and you measure that. You show before and after, and that is what we need to focus on. We can't focus on buying tools. So agreed. So that actually ties to my next kind of one. I want to know if you guys agree with this life cycle, and this is what I've seen over the years. I call it a 3-year life cycle of broken security. You buy a cool technology. I don't know if you see it at Black Hat, RSA, online, whatever. Wow, this is super cool. You buy it. It ends up creating alerts and gives you visibility. You're like, oh, okay, that's interesting. It's cool. I didn't know that was happening. One quick note, I think somebody mentioned earlier about the legal aspects of it, just because I've done a ton of incident response and expert witness. The minute that you have visibility into an alert or a vulnerability, things you have to fix it. Because if you get compromised by that, and there's evidence, forensic data that show that you knew this was a vulnerability and you did not fix it, then you have just lost that legal case when all of your customers start suing you. Because that, you know, the other counsel is going to say, you knew this happened and you knew about these vulnerabilities, didn't fix it. So visibility, you know, can be seen as a bad thing. So keep that in mind as you start getting technology. If you can't fix it, it may not be a good idea to even know about it. That's a whole debate that we could have. But then you realize that you bought this cool tech, but it has no capability for mediating what it finds. So you got to go manually do, you're like, oh, wow, I have all these risks that I found, but I got to manually go and fix it. There's no remediate button. There's no way to fix it within the product. Again, I think that's flawed. Then your staff, which is overwhelmed, they have not got it implemented properly. Then 1 year later, you realize, crap, this was cool tech, but we got like minimum value outcome results out of it. Then the next year, you rip and replace it for the next cool tech that you saw at the conference or online. Yeah, and then year 3, you roll out cool tech number 2. That's that life cycle that I've seen. And it ties back into why I think we have broken cybersecurity. I'm curious, does that sound familiar to anyone? And like Jesse says, no, not me. Never done that. As C. Williams says, continuous monitoring is crucial for organizations to maintain certifications and CMMC. And I love CMMC, I love SOC 2 Type 2, where cybersecurity has to be continuous. And if you just do it one time, and that's why anybody that's on this call that's known me for years, I've been selling pen tests for, let's say 24 years, I recovered, but it makes no sense to do a one-time pen test. I know you may need to check a box, or meet a compliance requirement. But what you should be doing is continuous pen testing and assessment. Because if I want to assess my house and somebody looks and say, oh, Corey, all your windows and doors are locked, you're good. Then that person leaves and now open up the window, then that pen test is vulnerability, new vulnerability has been introduced. And that's how fast we are evolving as an industry. So I see a few yeses, a few nos, but you can see how this happens. But this is a pretty common life cycle that we got to be conscious of and be able to fix. So in closing, let's change our approach to how we've been doing it. If you're talking to a technology company and then they're coming to you and saying, hey, this is amazing technology, show you all the features, the SE and the demo and the PLC looks amazing. Understand, how does this actually fit into our business? What business value does it bring? Because if you buy a technology and then you end up getting hacked, when some people on this call said that's inevitable, getting hacked, what will happen? And I've been in the room when this happens, where the board or the CEO will come back and say, hey, we bought this tool that you said was amazing. Why didn't I stop it? So you have to be prepared for that one. And so ask it before you even buy the tool, how does it help? Does the technologist give you more noise and more alerts that you don't have the staff to respond to those noise and alerts? Can you measure the value of the technology you buy? Like Ryan said earlier, what's the measurement of it? What's the outcome? Can you demonstrate that? If you can't measure the value of that tool, then it may not have any value, or you can just figure out some kind of formula, but look at it. Let's hold vendors, VARs, and again, I fall into that bucket now, accountable for what they sell. I mean, literally, I want you guys, to ask, Corey, what value does this provide to me? How will this help me? Have you even asked what my security requirements are? What is my goal? Why do I think I need a pen test? Why do I need EDR? Why do I need logging monitoring? Have you even asked what we're trying to get to? Make sure that the VARs are thinking about what you actually need. Again, don't just buy the cool tech. And I mean, I've again been in this industry a long time, and I know it's a lot of cool things out there. But buy a solution. Challenge that tech vendor. How do we actually solve this problem? I know you're giving me visibility, but how do we actually solve it? So we'll force them to help you get to a solution around it. Do you have staff to turn those tech solutions into outcomes? Sorry, my window's covering up. I think that says outcomes into value. Does technology decrease the risk, and can you quantify it? Again, I think we've already spoke to that. So that's kind of the end. I know I'm looking at time. All right, 102, not too bad. yeah, Greg and myself and a few others are gonna meet up at Havana later today. We'll just be there from 3:30 to 6:30. I would love to continue the conversation. Bring your mask. Somebody remind me, it's BYOM. Bring your own mask, but bring your mask. Happy to sit down and continue this discussion. Greg, I don't know how we are on time. I think we're right on time. But if there are questions, comments, I'm open for that if we have a few more minutes.
Yeah, if Aileen wants to monitor any questions that we might have.
Yep. One sec.
Thanks, Jesse. I see a few people said, great job, but this was an interactive conversation. I just led it, and you guys gave really great comments and feedback. I really want us to rethink how we're thinking about cybersecurity, just so that we can, get better and really improve how we're looking at it, and challenge our vendors, challenge ourselves, challenge our executives, and really rethink, cybersecurity so that we can continue to evolve this industry.
Corey, Tom asked, do you believe that as AI's inevitable increased use for nefarious purposes will force security vendors to shorten their innovation life cycles?
Good question. I think so. We're going to have to keep up. We've got to, stick with it because we can't go back to legacy type of approaches and just because it's moving fast. Because even in my last company, we had threat intelligence that certain nation state hacker groups were using AI. So if we're not using AI, we're in trouble.
Any other questions, guys? You can just put them right in the chat.
All right, well, this has been super fun. I enjoyed the conversation. I think we did really well. It felt almost as interactive as we would have done it face to face. So we thank everybody for attending, and we look forward to eventually being able to be face to face and having more conversations. But again, like I said, we'll be at Havana. Myself and a few others have already agreed to be there. If you guys are willing to swing by and have a conversation, and again, I've had my COVID test. I am not infected or a super spreader, but that goes back to cybersecurity, right? You think about it from the perspective of, just because I had it once, I can get it. It's so crazy. You have to stay on top of testing and security, wear masks, and same thing applies with, just regular life. So we thank you guys, and be safe out there.
Cool. Hey, thanks, Corey and Aileen, for putting this on. And I appreciate everybody's coordination and understanding on the fact that we needed to, kind of switch links at the last minute there. But in our world that we're currently living in, with the everything going virtual, things can change on a dime. And as we all know, technology does the same thing. So yeah, and we're probably going to, and I really appreciate Corey and his team to kind of sponsor this afternoon too at Havana. I unfortunately will be on the tennis court, so I won't be there in person. I would try that, but I play tennis pretty badly in the first place, so having a caipirinha beforehand wouldn't work out too well. But anyway, we've got everything lined up. You guys will all be getting the next version for next month. As I mentioned, that'll be our last monthly meeting except for the Christmas party, which we still have to or holiday party, I should say, that we still have to kind of figure out the logistics on. If you do have anybody like Corey, I was introduced to Corey from an associate of mine who I was kind of whining. I said, we need good speakers and we just can't find any. And Corey's name came up, and this it kind of showed today that that was a good choice. So thanks again for that. But if you guys do have any that you would like to hear, or topics that we can seek out and destroy to get some of the experts in here. I mean, this is an educational platform, obviously, and it's great when we can do the interactivity that we had today. So with that, if nobody else has any other questions, oh wait, I just got one. CPE certificate. People need those. Okay, so when you had your invitation and you registered, your registration email is actually proof for your attendance at this session. And then going back, we had quite a few questions. If there's still any out there, if you could send me or Virginia an email in regards to the CPEs for the symposium, because it was kind of interesting how that all worked. You got certain ones for different attending different sessions and chats and things like that. So it was a little bit more complicated than in person, where we could just stamp something for you. But you know, like I said, that was our first go round on that. It actually worked out pretty good. So with that, I will give everybody back a little bit extra of their day. It's 1:08 right now, so everybody stay healthy out there and productive. And like I said before, if you want to drop by and have a further conversation with Corey on a use case that's either personal to you or to your organization, please feel free to drop by. And then I believe, did you put your contact info up there at all? I don't know if you had that or not, but we can send out a follow-up email with that if you'd like. So just again, shoot us a quick email and we'll get you in touch with Corey and Cybertar and go from there. So thanks everybody and have a great afternoon.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you.